to another video by Stan's Auto Repair. Today's just a little update on the progress of the 1996 Ford Thunderbird project car. Some of you might laugh, but the headlights are literally being leveled out by plywood pieces, and the front bumper is being held up by 2x4s. And this is being braced, this headlight's being braced in by 2x4s and bungee cords. I got the car pretty much like this. This whole plastic piece right here, all the way across, as you can see, it's all missing here. We've got this little piece right here, and then a good chunk of it's missing here. I guess this car used to belong to my girlfriend's mother. She had passed away a few years ago. Her dad had originally bought it for her mom. The car ended up going to, when her mother passed away, ended up going to her aunt and uncle, and the car has pretty much was just driven. Nothing ever really was done to it. The oil was never changed. This car, all I can say, it was bad. I pulled all the spark plugs out. Here you can see them. These are the worst two out of them. You can just look at them and just tell they're disgusting. 1 second while I get okay. And go ahead and pull the dipstick. There's the engine oil. It's pretty low. I've yet to pull that out. I'm going to be pulling the valve covers off because the valve cover gaskets definitely do need change. I don't know, you can see down in the holes of the cylinders. It's pretty nasty. This engine is pretty dirty. I'm going to end up buying a scope because I'm going to need to get one. But if you look here, this is the EGR. Get it to focus. That is the EGR. That is pretty much clogged. So I'm gonna have to trace this back to where it connects and disconnect this tube. Hopefully I can clean it out. If not, I'm gonna have to try to find another tube, which I will tell you, finding parts for this car is very, very difficult. Rock Auto's had quite a bit of them. I've had to go to some other sites for some, but you can look inside. This is the idle control valve. Come on, focus. There we go. But yeah, I see all the carbon buildup in there. Not so bad on this side, but there's a lot of carbon buildup right there. I have the throttle body intake portion in the house. It was very, very nasty. It says do not clean it because there's a coating on the inside. I had to clean it. It was gross. And you can look at the spark plug boots. That's corroded on the inside. You can see where it's green. That's just terrible. That one there, it's green on the inside, so there's corrosion. And then this was the back port. This one originally was packed full of just gunk. I cleaned it out pretty good. Still had a misfire. These back two cylinders, these are the ones where the two bad spark plugs come from. There's a lot of fuel because the fuel rail was leaking right here pretty profusely. So it was getting a lot of fuel in there. Plus, the hoses back here for the heater core were leaking. So it was getting a lot of antifreeze down in there. So you can imagine what it originally looked like. Here's inside the intake. It's pretty wet with oil and fuel. So that's because the EGR was EGR valve was completely clogged. So that was non-functioning. We had some pretty big vacuum hoses leaks because some of the hoses wasn't even connected to anything. They were just like laying off, like, oops, I forgot to connect it when I went to take it apart. This car ran pretty rough. The antifreeze that was in here was so old that it literally was brown. It almost looked like Dexkill or the orange, but it was just nasty. It wasn't oil, which I don't think so. I'll know more when I get underneath here and drain the oil, which I might do that here in just a second and then show you guys what the oil looks like, as long as I can get underneath the car. As you can tell, I can't start it, so there ain't gonna be any getting the car up. My 2 jacks I had broke, and I just haven't had the funds to replace a lot of the tools that broke. So I'm back to square one, trying to do things with somebody with hardly any tools. But let me go ahead and pause here. If I don't come back, I just want to thank you all for subscribing. I'm almost at 600 subscribers. I would do a great subscriber giveaway, but as I said, my funds are pretty low. The income I got from YouTube is pretty much gone, and the job I do have pretty much doesn't pay worth a squat. Thinking about going and getting my ASE certifications so I can actually get a good paying mechanic job. But one reason I haven't went and done it yet is because, number one, I love working on cars, especially ones that are like this in this condition. It needs a lot of love and a lot of care. I love watching a car roll in, get fixed, and roll out, in better shape than it was. But to do that on a day-to-day basis, and I don't know if I would fall out of love working on cars. Some mechanics do this for the love, and years later on they hate their job. But I don't want to, because you got to think, some of you are mechanics, some of you are not, but you got to remember this. You work on cars of people that don't take care of their vehicles, as like this one, the case of this one. They don't take care of them. They just run them down till they're dead. And I'm surprised this car even runs, as the amount of abuse and neglect it's received in the process since her mother passed away. And that was just a few years. It's been about 3 years since she passed away. In just 3 years' time, it was bad, because when her mom got it, she was doing work on it, because she got it from another friend, which was which would have been her mother-in-law. That's where we live now. We live in my girlfriend's mamaw's house. But beyond that point, before I get too far off track here, let me go ahead and pause it, see if I can get under there. And get the oil drained. The antifreeze already drained. I'm getting ready to pull out the radiator because I need to test it to see if it leaks, because I think it does leak somewhere up and down through here or somewhere over here. But I need to check to see make sure that's leaking. This car is going to get a lot of changes. Number one, I'm going to be getting a new pulley, new water pump. So it's going to get a lot of love. But first, before I even get to that point, I need to make sure, by checking the oil that's in the bottom, I need to make sure, number one, the oil is not a milky color, because if that is the case, then we have a blown head gasket. And that, my friends, could be life or death for this car. Well, this engine. But number one check is you always check your oil cap. The oil cap doesn't show any evidence of that, but that's not always the case. But again, I'm gonna pause it here and let's see if we can do this. You guys can be with me while I do this. Oh, got the car jacked up. Got, you know, jack stand, dual protection. But this is the 4.6 liter. Just in case you wonder, you gotta get. The drain plug is right there. Got the frame part where the axles run, and then drain plug is right there, and it's a 5/8. That wasn't really tight, so that could explain the oil mess down here. Okay. Move this back just a little bit. Come on. Is there any in that oil? Oh, there it is. So far, so good. Set that to the side. Just looks extremely dirty. The telltale sign is when it gets to the end, because all the antifreeze and water will sit on top of the oil. I found that out when I was working on a 1996 Ford Escort. Friends brought it in, quit running on them, had some issues, pulled the drain plug to the oil pan, and bada bang, bada boom. And by the look of this oil, it is nasty. But here we go. I don't see any water / antifreeze coming out. But there's the oil. I'm gonna go ahead and let this drain a little bit longer, and I will then be back. We'll pull this out, we'll get it some light to double check it, because sometimes it does get mixed up pretty good, but this isn't the typical creamy milk color like, you know, like milk chocolate. Sometimes it looks, but so far we got good signs. I'm gonna get my magnet, and then I'm gonna fish it around in the oil to see if we pull out any magnet pieces. That'll also be able to tell me, you know, if there's a lot of damage in the engine. So I'll be back and we'll continue on with the video. Alright, well, here's the oil. Got my magnet here. Let's go ahead and extend it. It's almost like magnet fishing, I guess you could call it, but I can definitely tell you by moving this in here, this oil is very thick. And it looks pretty black, especially under the fluorescent lighting. Just running it through here, see if we can collect any magnet. Now if this come up and it was coated in little magnet fragments, that would mean there's a good amount of damage in the car. But if it really nothing comes up or shows up, or just a little, that's typical wear on an old engine like this. But not changing your oil and letting it get like this, it's pretty bad. And you can see there's just some minute amounts. Nothing really bad. So my diagnosis, the engine's in good health from standpoint other than the oil change. But again, I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank everybody for subscribing. And again, thank you all, and as I always say, if it's broke, fix it.